Are you ready to be unmessable with? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Be Unmessable With, the podcast where you get the inspiration, strategy, and coaching to be unmessable with, no matter what life throws at you. And now, your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio.
Hello, and welcome to Be Unmessable With, the podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio, and today my guest is an entrepreneur, an Inc. columnist, a guest lecturer at Columbia University, and the Wall Street Journal's best-selling author of Come Up for Air: How Teams Can Leverage Systems and Tools to Stop Drowning in Work. Nick Sonnenberg is the founder and CEO of Leverage, which is a leading operational efficiency consultancy, and they help companies implement his CPR Business Efficiency Framework. What does that stand for? It stands for communication, planning, and resources. That's the framework that consistently results in greater output, less stress, happier employees, and the potential to gain, get this, an extra full day per week in productivity per person just by using the right tools in the right way at the right time. Nick and his team have worked with organizations of all sizes and across all industries, from high growth startups to the Fortune 100. And I'm so thrilled that he said yes to being our guest on Be Unmessable With. So welcome, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for saying yes. I know we only met briefly in New York, but we have so many mutual contacts. It was almost like family right away.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Blake and Molly are two of my dear friends.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Exciting to
And they
meet
speak
people in
very,
their
very
orbit.
highly of you, by the way.
They said the same thing about you when I sent them the selfie of us. They were like, our worlds are colliding. So I said, okay, well, here we go. We'll collide even more. So tell people a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing, because it's an interesting career path if you look at, where you started to where you are now. So just kind of fill us in the way, in any way you can. I know that's kind of a broad question, but
Yeah, I've lived multiple lives. So I started off as a high frequency trader on Wall Street. So building algorithms and coding computers to trade stocks at like nanosecond speeds. And then I got into startups after that. I guess I've always been obsessed with time. And even as a high frequency trader, it's all about speed and time and process. It's like you have to automate everything. And there's like thousands of steps. And you're looking at, you're celebrating a microsecond win. So when I got into startups, I I applied the same type of thinking and was always interested in like this space of how do you save people time. So early on, I built an app in the productivity space to optimize scheduling, then got into Leverage, my current company, and early on it was a freelancer marketplace. So again, saving time doing tasks for people. And we grew very quickly to over 100 people on the team in the first year, 7 figures of revenue. But we made so many mistakes along the way and almost went bankrupt. Like one day, my co-founder, who's the face of the business, people didn't even know who I was. He picked up and left, gave me 2 minutes notice, not like 2 weeks or 2
2
days.
minutes? That's insane. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our war stories, but 2 minutes notice, and literally within 3 months, we lose like 40% of customers' revenue, going almost on the verge of bankruptcy. Like my dad's cashing out, taking seconds on house to give us loans for payroll. I cash out my 401k. So it was bad, and even though we were doing a lot of revenue, profit is more important than revenue, apparently, so we were losing about $500,000 a year. We were growing 20% a month, but with 15% churn. So it was like good marketing masking a poor product. And so I had to decide, do I bankrupt this thing or do I try to turn it around? And it was difficult because there's so much broken stuff under the hood. It's like you a lot of it I knew what needed to be fixed, but it was just a matter of time. Like time's our biggest constraint. If I gave you infinite time, like you could build $1 trillion company, but we're constrained by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when you're fixing something that's broken and you're hitting the 14 or 16 hour mark, and that's just to put out fires, there's no extra time to work on the foundation,
Yes, I
And
do.
we've all been there. And, being a professional firefighter is not fun for anyone. And so one day I just found a little bit of breathing room to kind of stop and analyze what's going on here. And I realized, and I was trying to analyze, where am I spending time? Because like that was really what I wanted to focus on. If I could create more time, I could create more process, create solutions to problems.
Hmm.
And so in that process, I realized I was wasting times in the kind of these three key areas. The first was in communication. By the time I responded to email and Slack messages, the day was kind of done already. So I knew that was a big one. So how do you
That's a space suck
optimize?
for sure for people. It's
How do you
amazing.
how do you optimize communications? And then the second was tasks and projects. Like I couldn't answer who's working on what or what should I do today. So we were using Asana, but we weren't using it properly. And some people would use that. Some people would text, some people would email, some would go DM in Slack, some would go in a Slack channel. And so not only are you getting communications, but you're getting double, triple, quadruple the messages, because it's a lot of like, hey, just want to make sure you saw this. And it's like, it's already enough, even if you have no duplications. But once you start getting all of that, it's just like nonstop bombarding. And then lastly, documenting processes and having kind of a place to find all of your company knowledge. And so this framework that I didn't realize I was developing, communication, planning, and resources, ended up becoming kind of this CPR framework that we trademarked. And I wrote a book about, fast forward, I wrote a book about it. And, people started reaching out to me, asking me to consult them. And I got to work with people like Tony Robbins and Poo-Pourri and Ethereum and other interesting companies. And everyone, regardless of size and industry, was benefiting from this CPR framework. So, yeah, we ended up pivoting. And now as a business, we do operational efficiency training and consulting.
Which obviously is working because you're killing it in doing that. And, and when you work with companies, whether they're small or big, what do you find is the biggest thing that gets in their way of implementing the CPR process? Because it seems so logical. It's like, oh, of course, communications, planning, resources, that makes sense. But there's got to be like snags in terms of what stops them.
Look, I think that human behavior, it's hard. Change management's tough. People are used to their ways. And I think people get short-sighted with short-term revenue gains versus thinking more long-term, right? So again, there's only so much bandwidth, attention span, time that we all have. So if you spend an hour cleaning up your Slack channels, that's an hour away from sales emails, right? Which one's going to
That's
generate
true.
you more money faster? The sales emails. The problem is if every single day you run through the same algorithm in your head, it's like, where should I spend an hour? Should I do it on cleaning that up or sales? Every day you're going to always pick the sales, right? But it'd be here's another example that I use sometimes when I give talks. Like, let's forget about the workplace for a second and think about your house. Imagine that the pipe to your sink gets broken and now you have water that's flowing on the ground. And it takes you 5 minutes to mop the floor or an hour to patch the pipe, right? Well, if you only spend the 5 minutes, you can go back to doing the sales or the other stuff that you would do with the remaining 55 minutes. The issue is after day 12, now you're in the negative every day that you're mopping the floor. And it's the same thing with everything we're talking about with efficiency. Sometimes you just have to take a step back and be willing to not go after that quick dollar win that you can do, because it takes money to make money. It takes time to make time. So, by sometimes investing that extra, we're not talking like hundreds of hours. Like sometimes, like we have some programs within 5 hours, you're saving 5 hours a week for the rest of your life, right? But you have to be willing to not do sales for 5 hours in
For
order,
5 hours.
right? So by taking away 5 hours worth of sales activities for 1 week, you're going to get now an extra 5 hours for sales every week for the rest of your
Forever.
life, right?
Yeah.
It's still, for whatever reason, hard to get people to wrap their head around this concept. because people just want to go after those quick wins.
Well, it's the dopamine hit. If you look at it from a neuroscience perspective, it's like you want that kind of, it's like people's attention span now is so short too. It's crazy.
Oh, for sure. Let's face it too. It's similar to the gym. We all know that working out is good for you. There's no hidden secret anymore, like how to be healthy. Like you eat right, you work out, right? But most people don't do it, right? So I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's a bit of willpower. It's not fun to work out. Like very few people actually enjoy it. No one enjoys learning how to get to inbox zero or learning how to, clean up your Slack. Like it's not an
Or putting
enjoyable
together a
thing.
playbook for a
Yeah,
process in your
it's,
company is
but
like, ugh.
just like, that hour at the gym is going to extend your life, or make you feel better. You got to do some short-term sacrifice to get there. You'll see like, that most people don't do that. So I think it's the same thing.
Same trigger in your brain. It's interesting. I wish I were one of those people who really loved working out like that. I've always wanted to be that person. My husband loves it. He goes to jiu-jitsu and he's so happy. I'm like, why can't I be that way about going to the gym? But I do it from my word, not from my feelings. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things for entrepreneurs and business owners, to give things away. When you say make more time, which is like the biggest thing that people get into the prison of their own creation of their company. They build a company and now they're trapped by it. What do you suppose, when you work with people, what do you find is the thing that frees them from that I have to do it all myself, versus delegating and giving away and being able to implement those kind of practices to
I mean,
get their time back?
sometimes it takes like literally like an extreme event. Sometimes it takes someone having a heart attack to start working
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Sometimes it just takes someone like lighting the candle at both ends for too long, where they find themselves like completely burnt out and like not in good physical health, right? To be like, hey, I can't deal with this anymore. Like I know a lot of entrepreneurs that, burnt the candle at both ends and ended up in the hospital, so
Yeah,
sometimes it takes
not
that
sustainable.
for them to say like, hey, I need to change how I'm approaching this, right? Because I'm going to die if I don't, and now I don't want to
What
position my services
I
like,
mean,
hey, like
as
you
like
won't die if you,
CPR. It is
yeah.
CPR though. There you go. It's sort of a little bit like creating that kind of urgency. But if you go to work with somebody, I'm curious to know how you diagnose the situation. Like it's easy to see your pipe is broken. Okay, yeah, you're mopping the floor versus fixing the pipe. But how do you see what pipes are broken when you go to work with a company?
Well, are you asking like when I go into a company, what am I looking
Yeah,
for? I mean, I ask,
yeah,
look, for the most part, everyone's got pretty similar issues. So like I go in, and if we were to say you were to hire us to work together, I would be asking, where are you spending time? What do you hate about your workday? But specifically, I would go through CPR. So talk to me about email. How many hours a day are you spending on email? How many do you have in your inbox? Show me how you're using email. And then I'd be like the same thing with your internal communication tool. Then we would talk about, how are you tracking and holding people accountable? What tool are you using? How do you do it? Is it efficient, not efficient? How do you prioritize your day? If I were to ask you, like, show me what you're going to work on today, what are you going to show me? You know what I mean? And then lastly, I would be talking about the SOPs and processes. Show me where it's documented. If you were to hire me, what could I look at to get onboarded faster? If a key person were to quit right now, where's the documentation, for how that's done? Usually that, and then meetings is a huge inefficiency in companies. So I would start with that. And then that usually lasts quite a while to have those conversations. But then sometimes people have unique other things that come up that we brainstorm together.
But it sounds like those are good diagnostic tools because it'll unearth whatever is getting in the way and whatever space sucking and time sucking.
Totally. I mean, if you just kind of go through the CPR one by one, and you go through kind of how are you tackling this problem, what's the tooling, you usually uncover quite a lot of inefficiency.
Amazing. And that's so quick. When I'm thinking about the process, if you were to do that with a company, it wouldn't take months. I mean, that would be a pretty fast process to see what was missing or what was in the way or what was there that was, counterproductive. And then the tweaking of those systems or rebuilding of the systems, is that something that you customize for the people that you work with? Or is it more sort of, here's a Chinese menu of things and, pick what works for you?
So we used to do quite a lot of custom consulting, and we've kind of been pivoting away from that. I have a mastermind group, so literally this week we have one, but a few times a year we do workshops. People will come, and in a small group setting, we'll brainstorm what are the inefficiencies and challenges, and we'll together kind of solve those problems. Leverage now is more focused on training because at the end of the day, everyone's got pretty similar issues. So like we just kind of take people through our training programs, starting with Inbox Zero and then all these other tools, Slack, Asana, and we have video courses, we have live training, we have office hours, we have asynchronous support. I do monthly Ask Me Anything. So the offers really changed from custom consulting to just join our membership, join the program, and then we'll take you through kind of our proprietary process. And if you have questions or you want some help, just hop on one of the office hours or hop on the call, share your screen and ask one of our trainers and we'll solve it for you, right? Versus having to build 17-page statements of work and huge engagements. Our business model now is per employee per year, and you get full access to kind of all of our content. We just try to make
It
it
sounds
simple.
so much more efficient. How shocking, given
Now,
what you're passionate
if
about.
you ask me how many hours I spent to kind of figure that out, it would be embarrassing because like we have thrown everything against the wall to see what sticks, and it was really difficult to kind of figure that out.
Yeah. And it seems like, efficiency is obviously a passion of yours. Time is a passion of yours. How does that show up in your personal life beyond your business and the difference you make for companies?
I mean, I'm always trying to save time. So I don't know, if I'm cooking breakfast, I'm probably listening to a podcast and like doubling up on things. You know what I mean? Um, my Uber bill every month is super high because like I value my time. And when I'm in an Uber, it's easier for me to do work calls or other things. Right. So, I will hire like a housekeeper sometimes to clean so that I can free up that time either to work more or I like to play chess. But I'm always, to me, it's about work-life integration, not work-life balance, and time is time. So I don't care if I save a minute because of a new way to use ChatGPT or an automation I set up, or because of something personally. Like it's all coming out of the same bucket
It's all in
of,
the same bank. Yeah.
it's all the same bank that you're pulling it from, right?
Yeah. And what would you say for, like, let's say a business owner or a founder, what would be something they could do today, an action they could take that would elevate their efficiency in their company?
Well, look, our Inbox Zero program is the most popular because email is just like the most broken tool, and that saves, depending on email, 3 to 5 hours a week. So I would say solve the email problem. It's quick, it's easy. These other things that we're talking about, like a Slack or Asana, it takes more time because you need to coordinate with people. Like if I teach you how to use Asana properly and your colleague refuses to get in there, you can't be assigning tasks to people and they're not logging in, right? Email, if I teach you how to get to Inbox Zero and the rest of the team doesn't follow, you don't get negatively impacted. So that's why email is usually good. And then meetings is usually another quick win. When you think about the cost of a meeting, I mean, it's like billions a year is wasted. I think I read a Forbes article, like
It's
$39
crazy.
billion in productivity loss from inefficient meetings last year. But too many people in meetings are too long. They don't have an agenda. You don't really solve a problem. So some quick wins, like audit your meetings. Don't just keep doing meetings on the same frequency because it's always been done. Like maybe once a quarter, delete everything and see what gets added back. Anything that could be asynchronous, use tools like Loom and send people video recordings and keep the live meetings to really what's needed to be live, with the brainstorming. not all time is, we're talking a lot about time savings, but time optimization is just as important, because an hour at 9 a.m. on a Monday could be a far more valuable time slot than an hour at 7 o'clock on a Friday after you're brain dead from 100 Zoom calls and you're in the back of an Uber with no Wi-Fi. So
Yeah.
you want to save time, but it's not all time's created equal. So if you can free up time at 9 a.m. because now instead of an hour meeting, it's 30 minutes, and people have sent you looms that now you could watch in the back of that Uber, and you can rewatch it. You can watch it at 2x speed. You can run it through ChatGPT to summarize things. One 30-minute meeting is not going to change the world, but if you have that thinking process with every meeting that every person in your company does for every day of the week, every week of the month, every month of the year, like, we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars of productivity gain that can be had just from those two things. And I'm not even talking about all the process optimization and automation and using AI. I mean, it's amazing how productive people can be. I kind of look at employees in terms of like a multiple of one. So like, how productive are you? Are you 20% like kind of more productive than the baseline? You're like a 1.2. Like, how can you get to like a 3 or a 10? You know what I mean? Like, how can you have a 3x employee or a 10x employee? And I think it's possible now. I think that like you could literally, I think people are thinking about these things like almost linearly instead of exponentially. I think that instead of getting an extra 10% per employee, I think you're capable now of literally every employee being like a 2 or a 3. And now with AI, it could even go up to a 10. But
It is shocking what's possible. Even when I speak to Blake, is our mutual friend, he's using it so beautifully, and it's saving him so much time
mhm.
and expanding what's possible.
I'm kind of doing. I have another company that I've just started back in my roots of high frequency trading. I'm doing it with algorithmic sports betting right now, and
Ah,
so I'm back coding. I haven't coded for 10 years. It's amazing how much you can do with AI and coding now. Like, this stuff is so good. Like, you write a little bit and it's like, oh, here's the whole function that you need. Like, talking about 10x, like,
gosh.
there's 3 of us on that team. We're probably outputting the equivalent of like a 20-person team.
Crazy, crazy. And when you used to trade, do you trade still?
No.
No.
I
I'm
only
addicted. I have a little addiction. I love it so much. Obviously, I wasn't doing what you were doing, but I just love it. I don't know the number. I have no idea. I think I just love math. You know why? Because math is unmessable with, and you can't really mess with it. It just works or it doesn't.
Same. That's why I studied. I was a math major in college and I did my master's in financial engineering. I never did well with these subjective like essays where there's no right or wrong and it's kind of gray. But I
Yeah.
don't trade. I only like to do things where I feel like I have a unique edge. And when I was a trader, we had tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure. We were paying millions of dollars just for like faster connections to send orders to the exchange. I had billions of dollars in capital that I was using. I would have no edge trading stocks by myself.
Mm.
But with the sports stuff, I think it's I think it's an interesting space, and I think that we've found a pretty unique edge in that.
And you were a poker player, yes?
Yeah, it paid for
You
college. I
said
mean,
that in your book. I
Blake
know.
is like the real poker player, but I played a lot in college. It paid for a lot of college, but I hardly play now. Again, back to
Really?
edge. I mean, back then, that was 20 years ago. There wasn't as many books about poker, and now it's on TV. I think kind of like, and I'm curious what Blake would say to this, but I think poker strategies almost become a solved problem. And I think when
Hmm.
I was doing it, it was still relatively unsolved or less solved. So I had more of an edge. But now everyone's read the same types of books, or, there's a concept of pot odds. Like, a lot of people back then probably never even heard of that concept. Now, if you haven't like heard of it, like, you're definitely not playing like every single poker
Yeah, that would
player
be me.
understands
I
it.
have never heard of it, so I definitely am not a poker player,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
but you know what I mean? So I think I like to do things like where I feel like, hey, I know something that other people don't know.
And does that come into play with your chess? I know you said you love to play chess. I'm just wondering if that's in the world of it, or is it a different passion that ignites you there?
I like problem solving. I'm not, that's more of a hobby thing. When I talk about edge, that's more like if I'm trying to do something that makes money. But I think we can all have hobbies like where you don't need to be, you could just enjoy it and not be the best
Yes,
in the world at it, Um, no, but
like wine tasting.
yeah. But chess, I think there's a lot of parallels to business, life, how you approach problem solving that I find just gets my brain juices flowing in the right way.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think if anybody listening is an entrepreneur, a founder, a CEO, C-suite, this is definitely a book you want to pick up for sure. We're going to have all the links in the show notes and anything. Also, your podcast. Tell us a little bit about that so people can tune into that. We'll have that in the show notes too.
Sure. So obviously, the book has come up for air, and the website for that is comeupforair.com. My podcast I co-host with a gentleman named Jay Abraham, who's a marketing legend. He charges like $120,000 a day to consult with him. And we have a unique podcast where we do a live consultation with a business, and he's looking at it more from a revenue growth standpoint. I'm looking at it more from an operation standpoint. And, we're asking, how do you get customers? How do you make money? All these types of things. And it's just an hour consultation with the two of us. And at the end, we try to have at least one or two big ideas, big breakthroughs that's valuable, for the guest. So it's really
Killer.
intellectually stimulating. Every conversation is totally different.
And that's the optimizedpodcast.com, right?
That's right. Yep. And then
okay, and I'll have that in there. And then your inbox zero. Where are people finding that training?
Getleverage.com. Lots of URLs for you guys today, but
I know. We have
is
click, 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 click. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, and I look forward to having more opportunities to, see you, to interact with you, and maybe even for us to work together in some way, shape, or form.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast. And I never take for granted that you spend time with me. And I always want to make sure that you get value when you do. So I am including in the show notes a link for you for our Basics of Being Unmessable with workbook. It's a 12-page workbook that gives you all the basics of developing yourself to be unmessable with no matter what life throws at you, to be able to shift from the world of reaction to creation on a dime. And it'll give you a whole practice that you can implement in your daily life over and over and over again. So click on the link below and grab that 12-page workbook and let me know what you discover as you engage with it. Have a great week.